too.
And Shane, so we're on the air, guys.
Okay, so good evening. This is a City Council work session agenda on Monday, June 24th, 2019, 4:30 in the Thomas J. Smith Council Chambers. We can start off with the proposed regular agenda for next week. We've got Mayor's Awards, public hearing, consideration of plans, specifications for the 2019 Dankworth Park Pool Improvement Project.
I'll go over briefly some of the changes, and then John is here as well from the swim club. But looking to approve the plans and specs for the pool project, there's a couple of slight changes that John will go over. Looking to receive bids on July 23rd here at City Hall, with a pre-bid meeting on July 9th at 2 at the Dankworth Pool. Looking for a start date of August 26, 2019, and completion November 1st. Engineer's estimate for this modified project is $416,460, and still looking at doing the pool dome structure over the pool for use, year-round use, operated by Most LLC, which we have a lease for. The city will continue to operate the pool in the summer months as currently operated. We did send us out to bid before, received one bid at $569,936 above the available funds to do the project. So did some modifications and rebidding in hopes of getting an amount that we're able to move forward with. And if John wanted to go over some of the changes here too.
So we made 4 major changes since the last bidding.
John, you gotta give your address and everything.
Okay, John Freeling, 6093 Madison Avenue,
Thank you.
Burlington. So we had 4 major changes since the last time around, where one, we've been working with BHS with the building trades class, and they're gonna build the garage for us. So that's been removed from what would be bid by the contractors. And then we also worked with staff quite a bit there was a cable and post system that was a safety code requirement to keep the bubble up off of the pool. And we came up with with working with the Arizona and staff to come up with a mechanical and a secondary generator that meets code requirements and will keep the bubble inflated even if the primary systems go down. And then that eliminates the need for all the cable and post and everything that goes with that, and also changes the concrete with all the footings and everything that goes with it, which was a major part of the bid last time around. And then we also worked with staff to come up with a way to insulate the pool house, which was a huge cost on the previous bid. Rather than putting insulation around the interior of all of the exterior walls, we're going to fill the existing block with insulation, a foam insulation, and then it doesn't have to be maintained over time as well. So that should be a significant savings as well. And then in addition to that, we did get a $100,000 Wellmark grant as well. So since the last time we bid, so that was a big help as well. So we're looking for a better outcome this time.
Okay, sounds good.
Questions, comments?
Council?
So August 6th, the work's gonna start?
August 26th.
26th, okay.
Be done November 1st.
So it'll be over the winter, the swim teams will be able to use it and practice in it?
Yep.
I bet they're doing their happy dance. I bet they're excited.
Not yet, they're not.
Not yet.
Nothing changed on our end as far as pool deck and all that?
No, this still improves the pool deck and does all that. It just some technical specifications on their end, so.
Okay, so I don't have any questions.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. All right, next is a public hearing consideration for an encroachment agreement between Y and J Properties LLC for encroachment into the city right-of-way adjacent to 425 Valley Street, Burlington, Iowa.
This is the former, I guess historically known as the Blau Building there at North 5th and Valley Street. The Y&J Properties are the owners of the building, looking to redevelop this into upper story apartments and first floor retail that we've talked about for quite a while here. They are applying for an encroachment. 3 primary items, one being a stair access to the east side of the building located within the alley right away. This will give them access primarily for their utility systems and I guess have Alliant access to their power in that location here off the alley. This switched around the same area. So that'd be a small stair access with all the utilities off the alley, and then railing along the edge of the existing sidewalk there on the 5th Street side. And then the third item would be any signs that they put on the building that project out would be included in the encroachment. So show a couple images here. So the stairs would be on that 5th Street side, coming from the alley side or the railroad track side, up along the edge of the, I guess, elevated walkway there, which meets ADA standards, has been reviewed by our engineering department to make sure it meets all the standards, and then would stop as the sidewalk height there lessens. And then any signs that they have on the building that may project out over the sidewalk would have to meet our encroachment policy as well, and so that's all wrapped up into this single encroachment application.
Okay. Council, any questions?
No questions for me.
Okay. Next is the public hearing, consideration for plans and specifications of the 2018 Front Street Hawkeye Arch Sewer Repair Project. Nick.
As you know, we've bid this project out in the past, and then we terminated the contract. Brian Ross from Klingner and Associates is here. Can maybe just talk about the differences of what we bid out previously and kind of the difficulties with the way we bid the project, and kind of how we're going to move forward.
Okay.
Brian Ross, 1703 Grube Street. Yeah, so previously we had some alternates in there for concern about pulling stop log gates and putting them back in. If we have the stop logs in, we have a big rain, we could flood downtown, or we'd take the stop logs out and the river was coming up, and it was just a back and forth. Mm-hmm. And we found, I think, that the stop logs weren't maybe as effective as we needed them to be, but really the river coming up was the biggest part of it. So we've gone back. The work that was done was we excavated between what we call our two east and west bulkheads, and we demoed the damaged portion. All of the reinforcing steel, all of the forms, all of that was purchased. It is on Public Works property now, so that can be reused. What we're doing for the dewatering is we're doing a sheet pile cofferdam just outside the opening of the Hawkeye Sewer in the river, which is how originally they put in the stop log gates. So we'll be able to dewater the entire sewer. We'll have the stop log or the sheet pile cofferdam in a certain height so that if the water does come down the sewer, it can get out into the river, but it'll protect us from a certain height river. That will also allow us to make sure we don't have a seal problem with the existing stop log structure. So we're going to get that taken care of as well. But otherwise, the structure that replaces the area under the track for Burlington Junction Railroad, that's the same, bid that out the same, everything else is the same in the hole there. So one lump sum bid, no alternates.
Okay.
Brian, this is a bizarre question. What does dewater mean?
We got to get the water in the sewer low enough so that we can do the construction.
So you can work on it.
We initially
Okay.
have to tie in reinforcing steel into the stone abutments, and we have to build the formwork for the concrete. Once that's done, we can let the water come back up because we can place concrete underwater if we have to.
Okay.
But to get down there safely, we have to dewater it about 2 feet below
Okay.
the arch. There's an arch, and then there's an abutment that holds that arch up. Well, the arch is gone, but the abutments are there. So what we're building back is a box on top of that. You have to tie that into the abutments.
Has our estimate changed with this, with the new scope?
I have put an engineer's estimate of about $350,000. I think that's high.
And that, if I might be mistaken here, but that's actually less than our original estimate, wasn't it? No?
No.
Okay, how much more is it?
Was that like 250 before?
I think we did 230 something, if I remember right.
Yeah, you did a lot of emergency repairs to get to the point where we could do a permanent repair. I think the bid last time was $250,000, but we're also taking into account some of the reinforcing. I think the unknown possibly that could increase the cost is that cofferdam out in the river and the dewatering or the removal of the water. So we're probably keeping that a little high because it does involve that sheet pile in the river.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? Okay, thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Next is a resolution approving a final plat of Border Run subdivision.
This is a two-lot subdivision at the corner of Roosevelt and Mount Pleasant Street. Mount Pleasant Street being on the north, Roosevelt on the west here. The current Taco Bell site, 2761 Mount Pleasant Street there. Looking to subdivide it into two separate lots. They have some excess land to the south of theirs. This is not a drive-through, it's just an old service road, but that would come just south of their existing drive-through and have Taco Bell remain on the site and then have a site for possible future development to the south of them. The Taco Bell site's about 3/4 of an acre, and the lot to the south would be about 6/10 of an acre.
Okay.
Okay.
Council, anything? Okay. Next is a resolution approving the final plat of Sweet Tooth subdivision.
This is a one-lot subdivision located off of Flint Hills Drive. Shown here. Essentially a replat of an existing lot. There's a, I guess, row business there, attached businesses. Currently, the property line does not run through the party wall. It runs through the business to the south a little bit, and then they're adding some land to the east of that as well. So currently, this lot in red is what's shown. The new lot will split right on the boundary of the two buildings, and then it'll add this small lot here to the east as well to create one new lot. Here, lot 1.49 acres. So it's not creating a new lot, it's just readjusting the lines for the existing lot.
Okay. Anything there?
I don't have anything on it.
Next is the proposed consent agenda. We've got a resolution approving nuisance abatements. I didn't see anything there. Anybody else? We've got a resolution approving final acceptance, final payment, and release of retention monies for the 2019 Deadwin and Gladys White Park renovations. Nick.
So this project does not have a resolution or any of the items in there. We ran into some work last week in engineering. But this project is ready to close out. Eric might have a better understanding. I don't know what the overall dollar figure is at, but I know there's a change order attached to this project that brought the total dollars from the original bid. I think it was in the upper 40s thousand, and then it's with the change order and the dirt that was brought in, it was somewhere in the 70,000 bracket,
which was the original engineer's estimate,
which exceeds our threshold for change order. So you'll probably see a change order as a part of this resolution. This has been an interesting project with engineering and then also Parks working on top of it. And then, so the dirt was brought in, and that's a big quantity that kind of was unknown. And I think that's the reason for the big dollar figure difference.
You mainly had, you had an estimate for how much dirt you're bringing in, and you brought in a significant amount more than that.
Correct.
Which is the primary driver of what the change is.
That's basically all of it. And then there's one of the retaining walls had to be extended about 10 feet on either side because of the slope, but that was pretty minor. This project had $56,000 of well-marked funds and then Starker funds as well. So the original estimate of $70,000 was within our budget, but we came in lower. But with change orders, are right back at the budget amount.
Remind me of that, the circular area. Mm-hmm. Now, is that filling in with asphalt, grass? Or
there's a playground going in the center of that. That's already been ordered. That should be installed maybe at the end of July.
Okay, I looked that up and I couldn't remember for sure what that was. It looks good.
Okay, good. 3, a resolution approving professional service agreement with Klinger and Associates PC for construction inspection for the RISE grant construction project.
So this would approve hiring Klinger and Associates to do construction inspection. For any construction project, we need to do inspection on it. RISE project doesn't go to the level that other DOT jobs like the bridge or the HMA on Mount Pleasant Street do. But with this year, with the locust sewer separation going at it, we'll be stretched thin for staff to try and do that. So we did some of it last year on Agency Street. I think the dollar figure is in the memo. I didn't print the memo off. I think it's in the 70-some thousand bracket for, you know, not to exceed dollar figures. Some will be 73,000. So we'll pay for that with the project funds. So when engineering does a job, they charge 7% for engineering and 7% for inspection. So we won't have any inspection cost on that, rather the funds for this. which I think is a little bit higher than our charging 7%. But when you don't have the staff or labor to be able to do that, it's difficult to do that. So
This is specifically the Recplex area?
this
doing
is
that?
for Hinkle Drive and the extension of Broadway.
Nick, I know I've asked you this question in the past, and I'll ask it again. Does it make sense to look at hiring an additional engineer to help alleviate the stress on the department?
It's hard to find one. I think Brian could attest to finding somebody that's capable of doing the position. Could it make sense for the future? I think that it could.
I mean, we've got a lot of engineering projects coming up. It sounds like, I mean, no offense to Klingers, and I don't know how, they're a great firm, but at the end of the day, taking $70,000 or $80,000 and putting it towards the salary of an engineer and being able to maximize that person's ability to help in the department, would that make more sense at this point?
It's difficult to answer that. It's all if you have a person to put in the position to be able to do the job. And hiring the last time around, we got lucky. We found, a person to put in there, but there wasn't very many people out there that had the skills necessary to be able to do it, because you need to have certifications for asphalt and concrete testing, which requires quite a bit of work. And it sounds like a lot of money, but when you think about the impact of that position overall, I don't know that it makes sense to hire another position, for this type of work.
Okay.
It's a tough question to ask or answer, I guess.
You have to be able to hire somebody who's the right quality, and we're probably not competitive with what an engineering firm is for what we offer pay-wise. Some parts of it we are. We have a little bit more set hours, but there are some other incentives that go on the private sector that we just don't compete with. So it's a unique person. There are some of them that fit very well for our environment, but there are a lot that don't, because they're looking more on the other side. Can be a little bit more competitive in some areas. I don't know that I can say it much more fair than that, or clear. Well, I guess I could say more clear, but I'm trying not to.
I'm just curious, because if we have,
We've struggled to find quality
$500,000 or
people.
$600,000 in personnel costs versus $1 million in engineering fees, when we could do it with an additional hire, might make sense. to
Inspection
explore,
is
but if you
the
don't-
area that I think that we can do, we could probably make up in where we lack, of which is the next item, is the actual engineering.
Okay.
The staff to do, the staff with the CAD skills and the ability to sit down and draw the things is our biggest struggle, because, we're inspecting from, in this case, from this year, March through November. And so you can't design a project in 4 or 5 months. Inspection is one of the areas we probably could do better than the engineering. So, sewer separation, it's more than one person that worked on the locust set of plans. They
Yeah.
had 3 or 4 engineers and techs drawing those plans. So you would think you could maybe create some work in-house with another tech, but if you're talking another engineer, another PE on staff, you're in the 80,000 bracket pretty easily
Okay.
per year. And
Plus benefits.
so it's difficult, I guess. If you hired the right person, it could make a lot of sense, but it's not an easy market out there to go out and find somebody that has those type of skills.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anybody else, anything else?
No?
Okay. 4, a resolution approving professional service agreement with Klinger and Associates PC to perform design of the Sycamore Street and Virginia Avenue drainage improvement over the bluff.
This project is one that has needed some attention, but we just haven't had the time to try and take a look at. It's similar to the 4th and North type project, where we've had some rain over the years, caused some degradation. This is over just north of over by Highway 99. Klinger and Associates did 4th and North for us. We had good success, so there's no reason to think that they wouldn't be able to knock this one out. So,
Okay.
and this is a sewer line repair project. It's not a budgeted one. So I call it miscellaneous sewer money, but that's
So
The
do
same,
I.
we call it the same thing, but the real count line item is called that.
How big of a project are we talking about?
Overall, 50 to 100. I don't remember the size of that project scope.
Okay.
The two of them combined.
Might be over 100 with the two combined.
Because we have to run some pipe through an area that'll involve some, maybe some demolition and re-putting back a building or
There's a lot of excavation to the north or up the hill from Carly Nelson. We've got to put in a storm sewer through that
Okay.
basement, so there's a lot of work on that one.
So will it look like the one that's on the bluff now where you can see that piping come down?
similar
Like
to it,
similar
yep.
to that? Okay.
One of them will, the other will be buried.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Council, any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. 5, a resolution approving professional service agreement with Midland GIS Solutions LLC to perform storm sewer GIS data collection.
This resolution would approve contract with Midland GIS for a fiscal year 20 capital item. In the CIP, it's budgeted for $100,000 to do GIS collection. So we have a lot of data on our sanitary and combined side for GIS. Where we lack a lot of is storm. So when we talked about modeling with the sanitary sewer, the master plan, they tried to also help us with some stormwater modeling, but we just lacked so much data in that area that we couldn't model it. When we go out into the field to do locates, we don't have a lot of that in our GIS software, so we have to revert to paper copy maps that are in some as-built plans back in the office. So what we want to do is try and get all this data collected, upload it to the GIS website, and so that way we can have it and access it in a digital format.
Will it be accessible publicly then as well?
I don't know that our sanitary stuff is actually publicly accessible. I mean, not that it couldn't be, it's just a lot of data.
Sure. Okay. Anything else?
Don't have any questions? Go ahead.
Okay. 6, resolution of, authorizing
Thanks,
adoption of policies and procedures regarding municipal securities disclosure.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
We didn't have this policy before. It might have been something that we attached some comparable requirements along with a bond issue previously. But we need to have a policy like this in place. So as we go to issue bonds or have any sort of debt, it's an investment product. SEC regulates it the same as any other investment product. Mm-hmm. And the rules of that have become increasingly more strict over the last few years. And we're already following a lot of this. This last year, heck, back in Appendix 2, there's a list of different events that we need to disclose. There's a list of 16 of them. I think maybe number 15 was added this last year, and it brought into discussion the need to revise what we have for what our written procedures are. Well, we don't have them that we've got them established. We're following them, but we need to have them in writing where you've approved them and understand what our requirements are. So we have requirements when we issue initially a bond debt, when we go out originally to do it and borrow money, to present what we're using that money for and to give a fair and accurate picture of what our current financial position is and what the risks and liabilities are for an investor investing in this product, which means they need to know a true picture of what our long-term finances are, and that we represent them and not put on rose-colored glasses. We wear rose-colored glasses. This mentions in here, there's an underlying statement, government employees and elected officials can be and have been held personally liable with respect to security laws violations related to the issuance of bonds. Some of those have been fairly egregious for what people have sort of forgotten to disclose about their current financial picture or not dealing with a financial problem. But not only in the initial, we don't only have requirements with that initial release of debt, but we have a requirement for those ongoing ongoing issues that go on with debt. The attachment 2 talks about those disclosures. If we refinance, we have to let people know about that. It affects all the bonds that are out there. If we have a ratings change, those are two of them that I had highlighted. We've had ratings changes in the last couple of years. We refinanced. When we do those, we have to report them to EMMA, which is whatever that stands for. It's a central depository clearinghouse where people want to be kept up to date on what our financial position is in case they already hold an investment or may potentially hold an investment with us. But we also, so we have to have those ongoing disclosures, and the third area is training. People that Stephanie and I and Annette, I don't know if you've done every year, but we do an annual training that is run through who? Dorsey. It's usually an hour long or so, and it's as dry as dust, and is about as boring as you could. I don't even want to get into. But we have a requirement in this document. It really specifies she has that requirement to do that on an annual basis. There's also the requirement for not just her to have that annual training. When there's specific training that's necessary, say for Annette with her role, that needs to make sure that that's taken care of. And then for you all as a governing body, at least every other year, to make sure that we keep you up to date on what's going on. And usually that's handled through Travis, and that's kind of how, as we've talked with Dorsey, and then Travis was in on that call, that's how we structure making sure that we keep it updated with any changes that are going on with that. So that's kind of what the nuts and bolts of this are. If you want to, you can look through here. You can see Appendix 1 identifies essentially that Stephanie's role is the one that's has that primary responsibility for developing written procedures. She also, when it comes to the written procedures for continuing disclosure, she has the primary responsibility for ensuring all of that occurs. And then you can see a form of disclosure table. All of our bond issues since since 2013. Anything we have to track if we're meeting providing the updated information on it. One of your largest things for continuing disclosure with each of the bond issues is to make sure that we have our audit up to date. So we have to track, and that's where you got all these columns filled out for how is each bond issue structured, the date of issue, the final maturity, who's the dissemination agent or who processes information out, that's Piper Jaffray, when it's scheduled for maturity, and how the annual report's supposed to be filed. And you can see a list for all the reporting periods and all the data that needs to be filed for each respective bond issue. Most of this doesn't mean a tremendous amount for you personally, but you do have to have an understanding. You have oversight to make sure that you keep us responsible for doing what we're required to do. And you do have a requirement for when you are issuing debt that you're presenting clear and accurate information. And when we review those bond documents, there is some value for you going through that document and see if it has an overview of what our financial situation is that you think, does that sound like what Burlington is?
Mm-hmm. I've always thought that we've done that, especially when Travis comes and gives his presentation.
Yes, that's what that's designed to.
With the rating agency report.
Yes.
So this is essentially formalizing and structuring how we must and are expected to
and
do that
you
process.
Would probably find that what's in here is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
But we need to have it written out.
Okay, sounds good.
I just want to know when the dry as dust training is so I can tease you guys about it.
Okay, number 7, set date for public hearing, July 15th, 2019, for the consideration of sale of property locally known as 209 South Gunnison Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions.
We usually
Just a
don't
set
provide a
date,
whole lot.
yeah.
at
Okay.
the-
Okay. Discussion items, I'm going to jump around here just a little bit, but we will start with the treasurer's report.
I'll say a class of 87.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Put that in there.
Crown, class of 87.
Okay. Okay, so May's treasurer's report was in the packet. Was that really loud? You'll note, like, the general fund and stuff, our fund balance is negative, but that's because we're gonna be doing all of our transfers in June. So so there's many funds that are affected by transfers coming in. Some of the things like golf course, that one's got a transfer of $35,000 that'll come in, and other than that, it's just the seasonal flow of things. In the sewer projects, Mazel is gonna be an SRF loan, so we will draw on our loan. And then like property maintenance, vehicle maintenance, our timing, and of course, the miscellaneous clearing fund is the flood that we're figuring out, or will figure out what's going on with that. Most of the capital projects on the capital project summary is either grants that we will be reimbursed for that we haven't filed, or there's just some transfers going on. Other than that, I don't know if you guys have any questions about anything, specific questions?
I'm looking on here, where's the miscellaneous, the flood one? How far down is that?
That is the 6009 fund on the second page of the fund summary, which is the first 2 pages of the treasurer's report. So you'll see it has 107,297
Okay,
deficit. And that's what we have in there as of right now.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Council, any other questions?
No questions?
All right, thanks, Annette. Appreciate it.
And if you notice, that fund started the year with 200,000. We've spent more than 100,000 on flood.
Flood.
uh,
Yep. Okay, you said we're not doing 2, right? They're
Correct,
not here.
that'll
All
be
right.
the next meeting.
And then appointments, does anybody have any problem with the appointments?
Nope.
Okay. And then Chief, do you mind balling up update on K-9 program and 2018 police annual report in one item? All right, have at it.
Which one here?
And neither one of them's gonna be too long. I'll start with the,
I'm gonna hold you to that, Chief.
What do you call too long?
well, Don, what's too long? Just kidding. Thank you. The K-9 will be fine. I kind of wanted to, I'll go over the K-9 rather quickly, and the annual report won't take much time either, but the K-9 unit come into question. Well, I brought some information to Jim, keeping him updated on what's going on with our K-9 here in town and our K-9 handler. Our K-9 handler resigned effective last Thursday, so he sought employment outside of law enforcement, so we kind of had to make some decisions. There were some things going on before that with ASTA, and I'll kind of go over that, just kind of give you an overview. The community donations were accepted by the Warrenburg Foundation to kind of look over that, and we did that fundraising effort back in 2016. It started in February 2016, and we raised $74,000 for a 5-year program, which was right on target for what we were looking for to run that program for 5 years, according to the estimates that we had. So that program started basically in November of 2016. K-9 Working Dogs International is the company that we selected to buy ASTA from, and they did the upfit of the vehicle, they did the training of the handler, the dog came trained, and that's where we purchased the dog from. Those are some of the expenses for the startup of that. Ryan Smith, of course, was the handler selected at that time, and there were some expenses that come with him. The thing to note on here is down here at the bottom, you see that $10,000 per year for K-9 handler overtime fees. It's a requirement for us to pay him for taking care of the dog, doing training with the dog away from work, and everything that happens with our K-9 every pay period. It's basically 8 hours of overtime, and so that's a rough estimate on there. So you'll see that required 16 hours per month of training. To kind of give you some of the expenses that we were looking at back then. This is some of the uses for the dog that we had anticipated, and probably many more than that. The current situation, of course, Ryan Smith resigned on June 20th, or effective June 20th, and just prior to that, back in, I'm going to say in April, Officer Smith brought to me some concerns about Asta's health, and she's suffering from, he noticed some weight loss and things going on, and that she was very hungry, and she still continued to lose weight, which was concerning to him. We use Summer Street Animal Clinic as her veterinary service, and they donate their service to evaluate the dog and routine care of Asta. What they found out through testing was that she suffers from that exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. And with that, what that means is her pancreas does not take the food and withdraw the nutrients out of it for her body. So this is a condition that Summer Street says kind of goes along with German Shepherds. I'm not sure how much of that or how correct that is. And in talking to Canine Working Dogs International, there's no history of it in her bloodline that he could find, and he has the bloodlines of all his dogs and where they come from. So there's no other, her brothers or sisters don't have this deficiency. Her parents did not have this deficiency. So I'm not sure how this comes to fruition, this health condition. The food supplement, which we started her on back in April, was a product that you put on every time you feed her, powder substance that you put on the food, which allows that enzyme to work, and she gets the nutrients. She started to gain some weight back over the last 2 months, so I was kind of monitoring that to see where we was going to get her health, and then Officer Smith made the decision to resign from the department and work elsewhere, so I kind of had to reevaluate where we're going from here. Canine Working Dogs International was initially, when we purchased the dog in 2016, was based out of Longford, Kansas. I went there. There's nothing in Longford, Kansas. It is in the middle of nowhere, kind of, and he worked out of a school that he had rehabbed there into a canine, basically school and handler school. So he's moved his operation down to around, I'm going to say it's around Pensacola, Florida is where it's at, just to have better access internationally with airports, clients, things of that nature, and he has some connections. I think his wife is originally from Florida, so prompted him to move his operation back down there. So I've been in contact with him. We made an agreement to take the dog back down to Canine Working Dogs International. So Asta was taken down there last week to be boarded down there. The price for that kind of is a push when it comes to the 16 hours overtime that I talked about every month, and the kenneling of her probably works out about the same for the next 3 months until October. If Asta's health is evaluated by him down there, he had some other suggestions that he was going to try down there. So once he evaluates her abilities down there, she is coming up on her 5th birthday in August. So she'll be 5 years old. Most working dogs go till about 7, some maybe 8, but that's kind of rare, though. That 5 to 7 seems like the magical number. So with her health and the original contract, there's some guarantees or warranties that come with that dog. So I'm trying to work that out if we have to replace Asta, what that cost would be, and other things. There's $25,000 left of that $74,000 of donated funds in the Canine Fund through the foundation. And so we're trying to move forward. So once I obtain that health status of how long she can work, I can select a new canine handler. I had 6 officers put in to replace Ryan Smith, so I had quite a bit of interest from the patrol officers of wanting to take that assignment. And if she can, Then in October is when the next school is available for the handler, and so I'll send whoever it is down there if she can, and that's at a cost of about $4,500 to retrain a handler, or to train a handler with ASTA. And there on the bottom, it kind of explains the credit towards the purchase of a new dog. And if the dog is no longer viable, then he has the first right of refusal at Canine Working Dogs International to purchase ASTA for a prorated amount, and then he can do with what he wishes from there with her. This is some considerations, and the reason that I brought it here is in talking with the city manager about this program. Back in 2016, Chief Beard was up here probably doing the presentation and in talking about this program and the needs to bring it back, and the public's interest in wanting to have a canine program here for us to utilize to help prevent crime, deter crime, and do our investigations. This is kind of, I did a kind of a breakdown of the cost. The $15,400 is kind of an estimate. We paid $14,500 for ASTA initially, and so there's a 2% basically annual increase, and that's just a rough estimate. That 2% is just a general increase, and then minus the credit of ASTA and the tuition and travel. I said it was $4,500. It says $55 up there. It's probably the other expenses that come along with the travel to that training. And then, of course, the overtime cost. So the total estimated cost per year is somewhere between that $36,000 and $40,000. I just want to kind of give you an idea if this program is to continue. We have to look at that down the road, probably starting this next fiscal year during budget time, and maybe talk about that if there's a need to replace ASTA. So with that coming up, I can do the evaluation of her, and I probably will have to make a decision. I'm going to say sometime in late August, September. So,
But a couple of those are a one-time expense. So, because your total estimate
Yes.
is for the first year.
Yes.
So if you take those out, then that makes your yearly expense afterwards less.
yes, her yearly expense, her annual cost is right around that $10,000, and then there's some certifications, training certifications that we try to include in our training budget.
Do you have somebody in the department that's committed to running a canine, though?
Yes.
Okay.
I have 6 officers there that are willing to do that and take over that
Okay.
handler's position.
All right.
I have not selected one yet. I'm kind of waiting for this decision to be made on ASTA and her health and where we're going to go.
Okay.
So the way I figured, if ASTA stays in service and I assign a new handler, the funds would probably be depleted by October of 2020, somewhere around there. So that's probably this next fiscal year we'll have to start talking about it. And that's a rough estimate on the high side, you know. So I want to be I want to just make you aware of it so it's not catching you off guard. And then, of course, the considerations for the 2021 budget, which we'll be talking about probably pretty soon. In 2022, the purchase, of course, ASTA will, if we bring ASTA back, of course, she'll be at that 7-year mark, so we'll have to start looking at buying a new dog within 2 years if she comes back in October. So that program will probably go another 2 years, and then we'll have to look at purchasing a new dog. So, any questions, comments, or concerns about that?
So, sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
No, you go ahead.
So, your personal opinion, though, Chief, it's well worth it? Is it having the dog?
Yes.
I mean, have we seen results in the dog being involved as far as protection and arrests?
Yes, and the dog's utilized. Sometimes it's not. I mean, it's hard to come out and talk about every instance we use our canine in. Just last night, I know the sheriff's department had a need for a canine to do a track out there, and we don't have one. She's, you know, being boarded somewhere else. We don't have a handler, so they used one out of Henry County, and we always have that available to us, other departments, but to have it here more readily accessible is a definite plus to have that piece of equipment to utilize here. And last night it would have been, you know, a lot more timely and maybe not lasted as long to track the person they were looking for out in the county.
When that happens, is that just kind of a contribution, or do we receive any compensation when they use our dog or equipment?
No, it's
not really.
If they ask for it, it kind of covers us to go out and assist them.
Do it ourselves.
But if we ask them for assistance on other things, they kind of reciprocate back. It's a kind of a mutual agreement
All right.
of services.
At least their pension's good.
And the sheriff did call me and thank us for the officers we did send out last night, so he's always very gracious.
Good.
So, moving on to the annual report. If you
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
So if Asta responds to her medication and everything, she should be okay, right?
should be.
Yeah. I was looking it up on, it sounds like almost like a version of diabetes, only in dogs, a little bit.
Yes.
A little bit with the pancreas.
Before you get started, I'm going to flip back to appointments. I forgot. One of those appointments is for one of you all to serve on a board.
Depends on what the board is.
The riverboat.
Yes, the Southeast Iowa Regional Riverboat Commission needs a council representative to serve on that. This is an ex officio member with the bill that was passed this last year on internet gambling with sports betting. This was one of the requirements that went along with that for some additional. State saw a need for additional oversight on these groups. So they need to get, for the county that where the facility is held, and city, so that the city and county have to appoint an ex officio member. That board meets quarterly. It mentions in here that when they're typically held, the fourth Tuesday, January, April, July, and October. The meetings last about an hour. It's essentially gives you an idea how the group is composed on the sheet, as well as how the funds go through. Ours is fairly structured. It's a simple pass-through agreement that we have in place. That agreement's been in place since I want to say 1990, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't have that written down here. I thought I did, but. And is kind of an in perpetuity sort of arrangement for how the funds are divvied out. Ours go directly to the Chamber for economic development purposes. But we do need to have a representative, so.
Did they say what time? Because I'm on Downtown Partners on Tuesdays. But
it's at, what, 4:45?
4:45 in the evening.
And they're held in Fort Madison.
I can do it, or
I can do it either way. I'm on a couple sports boards, things.
This would be essentially 2 meetings before you redesignate people with the next.
Okay.
Who wants to do that?
I can do it. That's fine. Then when we redo it, we can figure out who's on what and just redistribute it if we need to.
All right.
Sorry for the interruption, Chief.
Sorry about that, but I knew he was going to leave.
No trouble.
At the end, at a certain time, and I didn't want to miss that.
I've got to leave in about 10 minutes. So.
All right, the annual report. I apologize for this coming out in June, but we had anticipated this being done in March and kept getting put back on our timeline at the police department. But here it is. Moving forward, some of the accomplishments we talked about last year. We've been in the building since it's been a year, May 23rd, in our new building. There's still some things that we're finding that we didn't replace at the police department that need replaced with the HVAC system, but we're working through those and getting those taken care of. Some other things to note in there, the CIT, the critical incident team it consists of 9 officers currently that are certified in CIT. Most of the department is trained in CIT and has training in crisis intervention. When I say crisis intervention, we're talking about people that are in crisis, whether it's a mental crisis or some type of event has caused them to act out. So we have 2 officers that are actually instructors that instruct other departments, and we've held training at the police department for other departments to come and receive certification in crisis incident management. Some other things on there, you see where it talks about the parking enforcement and abandoned vehicles. Basically 12% of the vehicles that we identify every year are towed. Actually, they don't respond well to us asking them to move their vehicle within that time limit. And some of those are when we take initiatives like we did this past winter, when there's a lot of snow and they're easily identifiable, so that will go up and down. The POP units on there, the problem-oriented policing unit played a key role in a lot of federal indictments, and they worked well with our narcotics task force in working a relationship with the U.S. Attorney's Office out of the Southern District to reach, I guess, the threshold of getting them federally indicted and enhanced penalties for the crimes that they have, and usually those were weapons violations along with narcotics. The shots fired versus gun calls is very important, and we'll kind of, through this presentation, I'll kind of hit on that. Reserve officers, we have 3 in uniform and 1 in training currently, and there were 2 others in uniform in 2018, but both of those have resigned. One moved away from the area, and the other one had a situation in her family that she wanted to take a bigger priority than volunteering as a reserve officer, which I understand. That's basically the organizational chart. It changed just a little bit last year when I took over. There used to be 2 majors. There's 1 major, Major Grimshaw, and just the layout of the department. Some of the names have changed on there in positions within the department, but that's basically the responsibilities that are there. This years of service, the graph indicates the years sworn police officers that worked the Burlington Police Department. This fluctuates throughout the year. This is the end of 2018, of course, and we've had some officers leave throughout the department. So I think this year, as you see, the officers that are under 6 years of service or under 1 year of service has grown from 4 right there that you see to probably 6. I know I have 6 right now with under 1 year of service on the department. And this down here, you see 2 people there. That's myself and Major Grimshaw. So soon he'll be leaving here and I think retiring later this year. Years of education, we think this is important to put on there to just talk a little bit about when they come to the department, when we hire and do testing, we look for those individuals that have that 4 years of education at a very minimum. This 2 years of education is very important to us. So as you see on the diagram there or on the pie chart, it kind of starts here and goes around, so, or here and kind of goes around. So there's 6 officers that have less than 2 years of college on the department, and those 6 I encourage independently to get that education to move up in the department. The calls for service here, the one in blue is what we respond to, and then West Burlington Police, and then the Sheriff's Department, to kind of give you an idea of the calls for service that we respond to is 33,000, almost 34,000, compared to them combined at about, it looks like just over 10,000. This kind of breaks down annually from 2014 how the calls for service kind of fluctuate. Usually they stay around that 28 to 30,000 a year annually. This here's kind of it's a lot of information. You have it in there, so you can kind of look at it there, but I kind of broke it down to highlights what I highlighted off of that page. The animals calls for service kind of remains around that 2,000 is the only reason I highlighted that, and the need for the animal control officer to be there to relieve some of those calls.
Is that largely barking dogs, or is one running
stray
at
dogs,
large?
stray cats, dogs running loose,
Wow.
trapping cats or animals, I should say, mostly cats, and working with the animal shelter to get those impounded and returned, and other issues. They issue livestock permits and go out and do the inspections for that. And so there's a multitude of things, and that's a part-time animal control officer for 28 hours a week. Bus violations, I put that up there. You see we had an issue over the last couple of years there, 139, 104, dropped down to 43. Some of that's probably attributed to education. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention that currently we've started an initiative with the county attorney's office to do what they call a deferred prosecution on school bus violations. A person needs to attend a course, a 4-hour course taught by our officers at the department and just to educate them on school buses, why they stop, what the requirements are, so on and so forth. So it's a 2-hour, not 4, 2-hour class that they have to attend, and there's a cost associated to them for that, and that cost comes back to us to pay our officers to do that. Curfew violations, you see that 0 there, which is concerning to me. The calls for service for that. People just haven't called about it, is what's there, that 0. We do have some violations. They are down. I've addressed that with staff, so there may be a more significant number there this next fiscal year or this next calendar year. Domestic problems, again, I don't know what it is. It stays just about even. You know, it's kind of remarkable, but those are the 1,400 of those a year. The drug investigations, here was the 2 years, 16 and 17, where you see kind of an uptick there. We've kind of brought that down. Not that narcotics is no longer available here, but it is. But some of those federal indictments have helped. Moving on to the next page, again, I kind of took some highlights out of there. The gun calls, again, this number here is kind of high. The gun calls that we've received is 54 in 2018, and then mental subjects. And I put this up here. This goes back to that CIT program that we have to deal with that and the calls that we respond to. So we all know probably the reason for that. Politically, I don't need to talk about those, but that 157 shows a need for us to be trained in CIT. Property damage accidents, again, I can't explain it why there's always around 700-800 accidents a year. I just put that in there, and it seems kind of remarkable how it stays pretty even. Moving on to the next page to highlight robberies, of course, the same thing, we're down to 7 reported last year. School patrols, that 375 that you see there is a result of our officers. Every day that school's in session, there's an officer in every one of those schools. If not, I know that the shift commanders keep track of who's in what school and when they hit that, or when they go into that school and at least walk through it. So they're present at each and every school in Burlington each day. Shots fired calls. This is what I talked about early on, is some of the accomplishments going from 73 down to 59 and 17 down to 22, and that's reported or called in, which is, I think, mainly attributed to the initiatives that we took with the problem-oriented policing unit and the federal indictments. Suicide calls, again, referring back to the CIT, the number of people that are reported for that. This is the top 10 calls for service, and they're top 10 just by number alone. These are the calls for service, if you want to look at those, that we respond to and annually. Traffic citations issued. There was a drop there. Some of that, I can't explain the reason why they're lower, but maybe more warnings were issued. Traffic stops are important to, I guess, maintaining, traffic and keeping the accidents from happening. So in 2018, of all the traffic stops conducted, a citation was probably issued about 18% of the time. In 2017, it was 20% of the time when on a traffic stop. So we know that, and there's some other things to consider, that one traffic stop could generate multiple citations, or a citation resulting from accidents are not considered a traffic stop. So those are some things to consider. So that number could be probably even lower, but it's like 18% of the time. So you have, 18 out of 100 chances of not getting a citation when stopped. Motor vehicle accidents is a comparison there, and the number that I like is right down here, that 0. You know, a lot of zeros, there's 1 there and 16, and then that 0 down there, fatalities. You know, and keeping that number down there is important to us at the police department. This is incidents, and incidents are different than calls for service. Incidents are things that happen that we have actually taken a report on. So you see that stays pretty steady, right around that 4,000 or 5,000, actually 4,700 to 5,500 range in there. Again, I'll kind of go through those as the most important things. And when you talk about murders, this number here is important to us in 2018. I know in 2019 we've already had 2 of those, so we'll be right back to there next year so far. Robberies, down at 11. Aggravated assaults and assaults with a firearm. These aggravated assaults you're seeing here are probably some related to someone pointing a firearm or a very violent assault when I say an aggravated assault. So getting that number down is also important, as well as just these numbers here, and then the simple assaults also dropping. Crimes against persons, I guess, is what I should be saying. The weapons law violations have dropped last year. Narcotics violations, we're still right about the same range of enforcement on the narcotics violations. So like I said, I don't think we've eradicated illegal narcotics in Burlington by any means, but we're still out there doing what we need to do. The equipment violations, those drug equipment violations are things like paraphernalia and things associated with drug use. And it may be just simply because they're not probably charging, it's a misdemeanor crime. Suicides, again, looking at that, and attempted suicides. This here is just the accidents, rundown of accidents. I didn't pick anything significant out of there, other than it stays pretty consistent from one year to the next. Arrest, and here again, from 2013 all the way up to 2018, we stay pretty consistently, just right around that 2,000 mark, just above it or below it. This 2017, I think those arrests were indicative of the types of crimes we were seeing here in Burlington. And to get this to go down lower, the less people we arrested, it'd probably be a great goal to have. This slide is important to us. The national average for use of force against someone we arrest is 1.4% for the national average. Our average here is 0.45%. So almost a complete percent lower than the national average when we use force to arrest somebody. So, and that's indicative of some of the
paper, Leah?
some of the training that we do is through the crisis intervention and how to deal with people that are in crisis, and using those tools, not just for those situations, but in an arrest situation also, because it's very traumatic for some people when they understand they're going to jail. The problem-oriented policing unit, and I put it up here for 2018, and this program, the government funding ended December 31st, 2018. So right now, the 2 officers we had assigned to there is important for us to keep that program going, just because of the things that they can look at and investigate long after the other patrol officers have left. They'll go back and they work daily on some of those problems. If I identify an area in town where someone's having an issue with a neighbor, or someone, we know there's a drug house there's things that they can do and identify those persons and attempt to see what crimes they're up to and look at it as a whole through town. The officers that work in that unit are very well versed and understand who's involved in the narcotics trade, who's involved in some of the gang activity or the activity that happens by a certain group in town. So they're very versed in that and understand the process. They're also a very crucial piece of some federal indictments, and we're introduced into the U.S. Attorney's Office to, I guess, fulfill some of those obligations that the Narcotics Task Force is also working with them. That's about as quick as I can do it. Do you have any questions, concerns, or anything out of there that?
On that last bit, Chief, the COPS grant for the POP unit, is there a chance that we can file for that again, or is that gonna come back, or?
When that grant come out, I believe it was for the start of a unit like that. If there's an opportunity for us to do that and fill that out again to, assist in that, we would look at it.
Okay.
That's right, isn't it, Jim? Do you remember?
Yeah, but those are for new positions.
Right.
They don't get to
They're not
fund,
for-
you
okay.
don't get to fund the positions that you have in that.
Okay.
I could come ask for 2 more, and then we could enhance that group, so.
I'm impressed with the community involvement page. I mean, almost every week you guys are doing something. But when you see it all in one place, it's like, wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Good job.
Any other questions?
That was it for me. Outstanding work.
Thank you.
You
And I
betcha.
apologize for the lateness of it. I'll work next year to get that out, probably by March, the end of March, so it's not
As
so
long as the
tight.
numbers keep coming down, you can be as late as you want.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, do we have anything else? I guess.
Nick, do you have some?
Mayor Pro Tem, do we have any appointments?
If you leave next, there could be only one.
So I have a couple items that'll probably get added between now and the council meeting.
Simon says. I'm just kidding.
So the first one is I currently have a bid out there for HESCO demolition down at the riverfront. And then I'll probably also have a resolution that will give authorization to staff to approve any other flood-related projects up to $47,000, which references our purchasing policy. Anything higher than that, I would come back to council if that's appropriate.
That'll allow, for example, right now you have some bids, you've been getting bids on cleaning up at the depot. And
Correct.
those are to figure in,
Is
that like
12 to 10 to 15,000,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. We've got numbers to do some cleaning
so,
in there.
as we have pieces like that, we want to be able to, if it's okay, be in a position, as long as we followed our purchasing policies, that we have some authorization for them to just move through and award those to get
Yes.
them going.
Well, yeah, it makes no sense to wait on them. That's what we have our professional people for, so.
But we also, I mean, we even with that talked, Stephanie was asking how high a figure we wanted to go, and I think I still want to keep the larger ones to the extent that we can, moving through council for awarding, just because we need oversight.
Yep.
Correct. Then I also have another thing. Mount Pleasant Street Bridge looks like we are going to open Friday morning.
Woohoo.
I haven't heard otherwise today, so I also spoke with the chamber about doing a ribbon cutting in the morning at 8
Friday
on
morning
the
at
east
8?
side.
Okay.
So I know they were pouring the east or the west kind of slope protection there. Jesse was out of the office today, so I just wanted a confirmation before I set things into motion and get everybody gathered there, and we're not ready to open up. But there's some cleanup stuff. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much ready. I saw they were going to start striping. They had the lines laid out for kind of their preliminary stuff.
Yeah, it looks nice. The sidewalks underneath look nice, and
So the projects won't be done. We'll just have it open to traffic. So they're on the railing. You may notice that there's a jersey barrier right next to it. In the design, I don't think there was quite an understanding of the drop off that's there. So for protection of pedestrian traffic, we're going to extend that another 6 foot or more to get past that. It's like a 3 foot drop off. So on both sides, so they have to order that. But for the time being, we've got a jersey barrier there, and we'll open it up to traffic. So there's some cleanup stuff on the bottom side that has to be done and stuff also. So other than that, we've got numbers back today on kind of what the estimates from our insurance are on the port. So we've got 2 of the facilities kind of known on what those are, and that's important moving forward so that you can scope out the work for our, for the companies that are going to do the cleanup. We have yet to hear on the auditorium, but there's a lot of work there. one thing maybe that needs to be addressed is the people's thoughts of having activities there. You know, I know Civic Music believes that they're going to have something in September. I don't think that probably is going to happen with the amount of damage that's done to the facility and the time that it's going to take to clean up the inside. So with the damage to the boiler system, unless we can get some air conditioning moving in there. We have some exhaust fans going, we have the doors open, but until you start cleaning, that mold is only going to continue to grow, and you know the humidity is pretty high in there. So we have to get moving, and I know that it looks like we haven't really done a whole lot, but you can't step on your own toes when insurance hasn't been in to look at it, and we're also kind of waiting for bids to come in, and so.
Is there another place Civic Music can go if it's not ready by September?
The biggest concern I think that they have is the space for the productions.
Yeah, I think their first event we were talking.
I think Texas Tenors is in September. But
That's
I haven't
one
talked.
That has possibly other places that are flexible that can hold it. Maybe not the size of crowd is what they would like. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I haven't spoken with them, but I know we've had conversations with BRE, but there's a lot of events that have been scheduled out throughout the fall. The last time that we had to completely rehab the auditorium in 2008, it took 8 months to get the facility up and back into full function again. And I don't know that we're at that level, but with the lift station being down, there's quite a bit of sewage in the basement that needs to be cleaned up. So.
We have different, and as we've talked about it, you haven't even been able to get pictures of all the areas yet to even have an insurance adjuster give a scope of work for cleanup on it.
No, we were down in there today finally getting pictures because they had to be pumped down. So it's been difficult to, kind of get that full assessment done. So
different pieces that you need to have done down there, and I don't know order, but at some point I asked you guys to try to get some type of scope of what you see for steps for what's going to have to happen, but we're still waiting to where you can send specs out for doing that base cleanup. That base cleanup needs to go on before people can really be in that facility. It's the mold and other issues that are going on in there just from what the pictures and descriptions are. I'm glad I don't have to go down into some of those areas. After that, you have an HVAC unit. I mean, if you're going to prevent ongoing mold issues, that HVAC unit has to be brought back up to address that. That scope of work needs to be developed and go out for bids, and then get that reinstalled. You can't have a new floor. If you're putting new wood floor in there, you can't have that be a consideration until after you've gotten the HVAC back up and being able to do the
all that amount of stuff takes a lot of time and development to get people to even bid on it. So you can show people what it looks like, but until they know the full scope and magnitude of what that means, it's difficult for people to say, put a number on it.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest step, getting stuff cleaned up down there, I know there's concern about parking down there. The reason or the rationale why parking hasn't opened back up, we've flushed the parking lot, but I don't want to open up to foot traffic down on there just because of all the material that's still on the sidewalks in that area. Once we start flushing and cleaning that, the rain is helping. The rain, get a good rain, and then a day of sunshine starts to bake some of that stuff off. So we're getting better, but we still have a lot of work to do down there. So.
Okay. Anybody else?
You got your lift station back up last Thursday. From what I understand, you had less damage than what you anticipated, but you also don't know for what may come up with subsequent problems as time goes on. Now he has to come up because I put words in his mouth and he has to correct me.
You want to talk about the FEMA
stuff?
We put the Market Street lift station back online, as the city manager said, on Thursday. We we have 3 pumps in there, only 2 run at one time by design. We tested each pump individually and put the system online. It's functioning the way it's supposed to. We still have a lot of checks and cleaning that needs yet to be done. We have a lot of bearings associated with the drive shafts on the pumps. The motors sit up high and 2 stories below are where the pumps are actually located. So there's drive shafts with U-joints and bearings, and the pumps themselves will have to be rebuilt, but they're functioning. And so we'll be getting into that. We have some electrical components we have to yet check out. But again, the lift station's functioning. It's worked through the storms that we've had recently. So we're really encouraged with that way. As far as total costs associated with parts that we've had to replace, that we've had to rebuild, we're thinking that we're probably going to end up being less than probably $35,000 for expenses for parts. A lot of labor. We've got a lot of work to do labor-wise, cleaning, as I said, checking components, doing some additional replacement of some parts, mostly mechanical. The electrical, we think we're in really good shape there. That area did experience a significant amount of erosion outside, the landscaping, the grounds, sidewalks being undermined by the breach and the water rushing past that area. It's not an area that we want to have people walking around. Certainly there's some really difficult, dangerous circumstances down there. Someone steps in a hole or whatever. And there's a lot of muck that needs to be cleaned up. So there's going to be a lot of personnel time involved in trying to get that place cleaned up.
Stinky muck.
Stinky muck, yes. Well, you know, stink is in the nose of the beholder. Some of us deal better with it than others. But we feel that things went about as best as they could go. And I don't know as far as the downtown businesses and such. I did get a call from one of them today asking me about the status on the lift station. I did not go out and do a news release. They were asking if the station was back online. I believe they had successfully cleaned up their basement and gotten expandable plugs in their floor drains, and they didn't know whether it was safe to remove those plugs. But the station is functioning the way it's supposed to.
That's good.
So,
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Don.
We did have the meeting with FEMA last night as a kickoff. I'm not sure, Nick, what were you wanting me to cover on that?
They know that the time frame got extended, right?
Right.
Yep, it covers through the full event.
That's all I was really
You know, I got some questions there. You know, so when it comes to FEMA, is Gina Harden the contact for people if they have calls or concerns, they need to go through her?
Yeah, if you're talking about individual property owners, yes.
Because they're calling
She'll
asking.
be the best person to be able to.
Okay, so just send them her direction.
She may direct them to Iowa Homeland Security.
Okay,
A lot of the declarations that are potential for being out there, we're not meeting thresholds. Some of them, as she was talking about it last week, we weren't too far off of for the number of structures impacted, but we weren't hitting them.
so we just need to get the word out if someone has
Fairly
suffered,
quickly.
they need to report it.
Yes.
I wrote about this on Sunday.
I know.
Why you're winking at
I'm
me.
winking at you to put it in there again.
Yes, Don.
I just wanted to throw out a thank you, kudos to the National Guard. We were faced with trying to get out through the flooded area with a piece of equipment that could safely make passage through that deep water to handle those motors that we had to pull. Those motors were like 1,200 pounds each. We did some discussion amongst ourselves. Someone came up with a suggestion of maybe contacting the National Guard. They've got some toys and things that we don't have, and we thought they might be interested in having the opportunity to serve the local community and put some of that equipment to use. And they did send down personnel to us. We did work through Gina Harden to go fill out the paperwork to allow them to come and help us out, and we really appreciated them. Their coming and helping us enabled us to get the motors out of there 2 or 3 days earlier than what we would have been able to do. So, which of course translated to us being able to get the lift station back online sooner. So
that's great.
Thanks to the National Guard.
Duly noted. That's fantastic.
And just a reminder, Tiger Grant is gonna, we need to have final designs by August of 2020. So, which is a long time, but it's not, because the biggest part is the environmental hurdles and clearances that need to be part of that approval process, and the timelines that are involved with them. They may not be the full year that getting from the award of the Tiger Grant to getting a signed document, but they're not that far off of that. So we need to come up with what our final designs are for the the scope of work that we're going to be doing as part of that project very quickly. And what we're trying to do is by the end of August to have that anyway. I think that our initial timeline was August 15 to try to have held two public meetings, 2 community meetings. We'll have several specific groups that will be involved in doing some design thoughts, including like BRE, Riverfront Commission, Downtown Partners, and I know that I'm going to miss a few, so I'm not going to try to hit all of them. But those type of groups that were involved in the initial planning when we first did the scope for the flood wall design. But we're going to try to get input, but we have to have a product that's turned around very quickly. And there isn't a tremendous amount of flexibility, but there is flexibility within what we do. But it's only going to be for a fairly short period of time, because you have to get to where we have that final design that we're then able to market to the different entities that have to give approvals on that. Does that kind of cover that?
Sorry, I don't like the act from the back. The biggest thing right up front is to kind of know the general direction that they're going to head. They'll do updates at 30% and 60% and 90%. So there's ability to change, or if you see something at the 30% design plan to say, hold up,
we don't like that.
We don't like that, let's steer over. But the conceptual stuff that we're going to do with these charrettes and the steering committee in the next 2 months is going to be a big determining factor on how we move, from an overall design, and what are we doing and what are we not doing. So, but as far as like, well, we don't want a tree there, that's not that big of a deal. But we need they need to have the bigger idea of what we're doing. What things are we designing and putting down at the riverfront, or what are we going to do for design on Main Street? General themes.
So basically, we need to dust that original plan off, and then go from there as far as some public input.
Correct.
So, are we going to need to schedule a special session for that, do you think?
See, that's going to be that you're going to have not for the council.
Okay.
You'll have that committee will meet and have some discussion. There'll be 2 community meetings, one that they were kind of looking at the first half of July, and one then in August.
Correct.
So those will be more community input ones. Council would have representatives on that smaller group, but then all council is certainly welcome to the public meetings.
Okay. Sounds good.
You'll know more here in the next week. And, when the V&K group went back, and they'll probably get a schedule out so we can start scheduling those types of events.
That's all.
That's all? Do you have anything?
Just a reminder to attend Farmers